Hi there, everybody. Welcome to The Educator's Voice, a podcast by teachers for teachers, so that you can find out current things that are going on in our schools in Queensland, which is really important. For this episode too, I'd like to welcome Steve Roberts, Principal of Logan City Special School, to our office so that we can talk about all things going on in special ed. Steve is a very experienced principal and teacher in our sector, has spent time in England teaching as well, and is also the Vice President of QASEL.
Today we're diving into the lived experiences of teachers and school leaders within special schools. We'll also be talking about why special schools matter and the importance and advocacy that public education plays in this space.
Steve, thanks so much for being in here with us at the QTU today. Can you perhaps explain to listeners, what brought you into teaching? What was the carrot? Tell us your history.
Well, firstly, thanks, Cresta, Leah, for the opportunity. Great to be here. I think for me, my entry into teaching was really around wanting to make a difference into kids' lives, to give back to communities. I first started in my career as a high school PE and science teacher. I really liked sport. Growing up, I wasn't good enough to be paid to play any sports professionally. So the next best thing was to, teach kids how to play sport and earn a living that way. So that was my really the entry point for me into the career.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? Like when you came in, how it might have been when you first came into teaching to how it's a little bit different now, or maybe even the differences between being a teacher and a school leader of a big special school.
Oh, look, there's been a lot of differences, Cresta, in the 25 years. So I think, my first posting was to Gladstone State High School. I enjoyed, the tremendous benefits of department housing and had a terrific time with a whole bunch of young teachers where we would work hard and play hard, and so we really enjoyed being enthusiastic in the schools that we were all working in that region, but also joining in with those local communities in the sports clubs and going and enjoying all the fishing and other outdoor pursuits that were on offer as a young early career teacher was terrific fun. I think. Fast forward 25 years to now as principal of a special school, the two things are so completely separate that it's hard to draw too many individual comparisons. I think the work has definitely shifted. I think community expectations have definitely shifted. I think as a society, the value we place on education and the expectations we have of educators in our schools has certainly shifted in that time as well.
So, Steve, you said that you started out in Gladstone and that was in a mainstream school.
Yep.
So what actually drew you to special education?
Yeah, it's a great question, Leah. I spent the first couple of years at Gladstone State High School. It was a terrific school, and then moved to the UK and had a interview that I think the day after I landed in the UK at a school in Oxford, just outside London. And I remember in halfway through the interview thinking these questions are a bit curly. I reckon this could be a special school. And it turned out that the school was a school for students with emotional and behavioural difficulties, largely from trauma backgrounds, and. There was nothing in the name of the school that sort of indicated that they were the students that they catered for. I was offered the position, and the next 3 months were probably the steepest learning curve of my professional career. all of the skills and strategies that had helped me to be successful as a PE and science teacher in Gladstone State High School went out the window. I pretty much needed to start from scratch in terms of figuring out how to engage with these groups of learners and to build my confidence in that particular setting. So that led to 3 months of pretty solid reflective practice and figuring out what worked and what didn't work the hard way often. And I ended up staying in that school for 5 years. The passion really was around making the individual differences for those particular students, particularly in the areas of emotional self-regulation and communication. And it was so rewarding to see students to learn and to equip themselves with new strategies to be successful in their community and other environments. I really loved it.
So it's really powerful to hear how people get into this space, you know, given how unique that special schools really are.
So, Steve, high school to England, back to Australia. Now you're a principal of a really large special school down here in Brisbane. What's a typical day look like?
Cresta, a typical day, I guess, looks like.
Is there a typical day?
Yeah. I think Logan City Special School is a really large school. We've got 72 classes spread across 2 campuses. There's a head of school who looks after one of the campuses. There's 6 deputies that support across both campuses, and then heads of department as well. And so I probably now spend, unfortunately, less of my time with students and more of my time supporting the leaders in the school. A key part for me is making sure that myself and the leadership team are on the gate every morning and every afternoon and getting that connection, not only with kids but also with families and parents as well. I'd love to get out onto the playground and enjoy interacting with the kids, and certainly into classrooms to see the great things that the teachers are doing in their classrooms. So I think, in answer to your question, the ideal day is the right balance between spending time with all of the different members of our community that contribute to making the school, a great place to be.
It's really important work, isn't it? Like being out with the community, making sure the balance is with your staff and kids and all that type of thing. For yourself as a school leader, what is one of the biggest challenges that you might be facing at the moment?
I think for any school leader, one of the biggest challenges is triaging the ever widening scope of the role and the tasks associated with the role, and trying to identify where to put your time and energy at any given point in the day.
And what about your staff? What about your teachers?
I certainly think the workload is a key part of challenges for our teachers, and that's something that as school leaders we're really aware of, and we do see our role to protect teachers from a lot of the challenges associated with that, and to make sure that their time and energy, as much of their time and energy, can be spent preparing for and implementing the great learning experiences that happen in classrooms.
So we've talked about some of the challenges, and some of them are quite immense, aren't they? But we know that teaching is a job of challenges regardless of where you're teaching. But obviously, the reason that we keep coming back each day is for the rewards as well. So can you perhaps outline, a really rewarding moment that you've had recently, and maybe, one that you know of a staff member who might have had a rewarding moment recently?
Oh, Cresta, there's so many to choose from, and it sounds like a bit of a cliche to say that. We start all of our meetings with celebrations, regardless of whether it's a small group meeting or broader meetings with teachers and teacher aides. And you never have to wait more than half a second before someone's jumping in, celebrating great things that are happening with kids all the time. I think one of the great things that's happening for us at the moment is being spread across 2 campuses. We've got the ability to really cater more effectively to the needs of our prep to year 6 students on the Wembley Road campus, and then the needs of the senior students on the Charles Avenue campus. That's something that's only been up and running since the commencement of 2025, and so that's still new work for us that we're certainly really enjoying.
So, Steve, there are maybe some misconceptions out there about special schools, and if there are any, how would that affect staff, students and the community?
That's a big question, Leah. I think one of the first things I'd probably suggest is the word disability encompasses much more breadth than I think a lot of people realise, and everyone has their own either lived experience or understanding of what disability is, and often that experience and knowledge covers a small element of what that really broad concept is. And so I think one of the first misconceptions that are potentially out there, because this is my speculation, is that a lot of students with disabilities are supported in special schools. The reality is it's less than 5% of students that are captured on the NCCD that are actually educated in special schools. And so I think for people to realise that the majority, 95%, over 95% of students with disabilities and with complex learning needs are actually being supported in our primary and secondary schools across the state, would be a really big one for me to point out.
So I know you said it's about a 5% of students with disabilities are in special schools. So
Yep.
What would you say to someone who thinks that special schools are no longer needed?
Look, I think that there are certainly people out there that have those opinions. I think on occasions they don't necessarily appreciate the breadth of the term disability, as I said, and if your lived experience is with someone with a disability who can be supported and whose learning needs can be met in a primary or secondary setting, then that's I can understand why you might think like that. The complexity of the learners that we support in special schools are so significant that it really would pose a huge challenge for anyone to be supporting our learners in, for want of a better term, a mainstream classroom with 25 at best, more upwards of students with a range of different learning needs and supports.
Yes, because there certainly is a lot of debate around that at the moment.
We've talked about some pretty small things already, but kidding, like big things already. How do you balance inclusion and making sure that kids get the right support that they need? It's a really big topic, right? And our members are really reflective on it, and everybody wants to do the best job by every kid that they have in their classroom. But we know that there's a lot of pressure with inclusion and making sure that kids can get the right support. Have you got a view or a thought or some breakdown as to how you think that can be perhaps done better, or have you got an example of where it's done well?
Look, I think the debate, for want of a better word, around inclusion and the link back to Leah's question is felt really keenly by special school principals and leaders, because the reality is that we lead environments that are exclusive. They're not inclusive. Not everyone can come to a special school, and so that's certainly something that I acknowledge. I think the role for special school leaders and for special schools into the future, recognising again that we support 5% of the students captured on the NCCD, is to leverage the expertise that we have with our staff and to build the capability and confidence of staff in primary and secondary settings to support the 95% of students captured on the NCCD, so that they can be as successful as possible in those environments. And I think moving forward, there are opportunities with the building of new schools, with co-located with other primary and secondary schools. That gives us great opportunity to do that. Before leading Logan City Special School, I was principal of Currabee Special School. We did some work in 2019, I think it was, for 3 years, where we ran case management sessions and afternoons with teachers from surrounding primary and secondary schools, followed by targeted disability-specific PD sessions. They were hugely popular and really well attended. And not only did they build the capability and confidence of the staff in those surrounding primary and secondary schools, but they also built the capability and confidence of staff at Currabee Special School as well, because we all learn by and through each other, and it was a terrific opportunity. So, replicating that at a school the size of Logan hasn't been something that I've been able to figure out yet. We're fortunate to have terrific neighbours with Woodridge State School and Woodridge State High School on either side of us, and we've certainly enjoyed opportunities to do work together. But I think as a system, the opportunity to leverage the expertise that sits in our special schools will be one that I think would be a great opportunity moving forward in primary and secondary schools. I think that it'd be remiss of me not to point out here as well that there is a significant need for our tertiary institutions to recognise the need to equip our graduates with the skills and the knowledge that they need to support diverse learners, because regardless of whether you're going to be, you want to be a special school teacher or a secondary history teacher or a primary teacher, the reality is every single graduate needs to know how to cater for the needs of diverse learners, and that's something that is a huge gap for us at the moment in our tertiary opportunities into education.
Yeah, there's a gap there, isn't there? Really is a gap between what's offered and what's delivered. Yeah.
So you have mentioned a couple of challenges there, Steve. So if you had a magic wand and you could change anything or give any support to your staff, what would it be?
That's a really big question. I think one of the things would definitely be time. I think one of the things that we find hard is to have time where we can get staff together to build capability, to work on things as a community that we want to do, and the time that we do have is so precious that, again, we really need to triage the 50 different things that you could possibly be doing to figure out how are we going to manage this time as effectively as possible. So I think time is certainly one. Look, I think the capability piece, though, is probably the overarching one, Leah. So I think if our graduate students were leaving universities with a good understanding of how to meet the needs of complex learners and with some specific skills and knowledge in the area of disability, I think that would take a significant amount of pressure off the system.
So we talk about staff, but what about students?
That's a great question, Leah. I think one of the things certainly in my role with QASEL supporting 700 members across the state that we are really aware of is that there is a lot of variability in the infrastructure that kids have access to in different educational settings. And so I think and there's no doubt that the department is committed to improving infrastructure opportunities, but we know that again, when budgets are limited, things can only be stretched so far. I think if I had a magic wand, it would be to make sure that all students had access to, the best possible educational facilities that they could access to meet their educational needs.
And Steve, that's a really big one, and it's something that we've currently got in our budget asks for this year. Is that the state government commit to furnishing our special schools in particular to ensure that learning environments are quality environments where every student can learn and every teacher can do their job of being able to teach kids in a really well-resourced, great functioning schools. So can I just I know at the beginning of this year and last year as well, you brought your school leadership team as well as the leadership team of other schools, special schools in your areas, brought all of your staffs together. So you had your teachers, your teacher aides, your whole admin teams together. Can you elaborate? And, we were part of that as well, which was really great to be there. Can you elaborate what difference the QTU makes in your schools?
Look, I think the QTU plays a critical role in ensuring that the industrial entitlements for teachers are firstly understood and secondly implemented in ways that are contextually relevant for schools. I think the role of the reps in school settings is to make sure that members in schools understand their entitlements, to make sure that schools understand their obligations, and I think when schools operate well, they work in collaboration and alongside the representatives from all the different unions to make sure that the needs of everyone in the community are considered. And so I think the importance of the QTU in schools is really critical. There's obviously the advocacy piece in terms of making sure that the resourcing needs and the working conditions for teachers are at the forefront of consideration and decision making.
And so, Steve, I noticed that you talked about teachers. What about school leaders?
Yeah, look, there's and that's a great pickup. And it's probably remiss of me there, Cresta. The QTU are really strong supporters of school leaders at all levels, and certainly provide great support again in terms of advocacy, in terms of advice, and opportunities for teachers to come together and connect to support each other.
So, Steve, what gives you hope for the future of special schools in Queensland?
I think the considerable investment into the new special schools that are currently being constructed gives me hope that we recognise the important role that special schools play in educating those students. I think the opportunities for us to work alongside primary and secondary schools is something that I'm really excited about into the future. The other thing that gives me hope is seeing the leaders that are coming through not only special schools but primary and secondary schools as well. That will be future heads of department, future deputy principals, future principals. Fills me with hope that we've got some great leadership coming through to support our system and all learners across Queensland.
So, Steve, our members teachers, school leaders are really feeling the pressure in some classrooms almost on a daily basis around occupational violence and safety. What part can the QTU play in this? What part do we play, and how can we all work together to ensure that our members can go to work and be safe, and that students can learn on a daily basis?
It's a good question, Cresta. It's a big question. I think the part that I've seen the QTU playing to date is certainly in the role of advocacy. We've seen that advocacy has led to the department's rollout of the workplace health and safety coordinator positions across the state, commencing in special schools and moving on to primary and secondary schools. That is a terrific step in the right direction, and an acknowledgement that the department also recognises the need to ensure that safety is the priority for all staff in educational settings. I think the other component sits with resourcing and making sure that schools have the adequate levels of resourcing to be able to do everything they can to ensure the safety of staff and students. And I think the third element is the responsibility of school communities to come together to recognise that the role of safety sits with all of us, and the need for all members of school communities to pull together to recognise both the proactive elements of things that can be done to promote school safety, and also the reactive responses that need to be in place to make sure that there are adequate supports in place to maintain and ensure our schools are as safe as they can be.
Steve, when we started, you talked about going from Gladstone PE, maths and science, to England, to basically hitting the learning curve and hitting the learning pit and coming out of it. If you had a new teacher moving to Queensland or someone just coming out of uni, and you could give them a pitch to come into special education, keeping in mind, of course, that it's a bit tough from the uni perspective at the moment, what's your pitch?
I think the pitch is, really having the opportunity to make a significant difference in not only the life of individual kids but families in a way that goes far beyond traditional education streams. And as I said earlier, equipping students with greater skills around their emotional regulation, with individual communication strategies so that they can go out into the community and be heard and be understood and to share their message, and to equip them with the skills that they can contribute meaningfully into their communities. I don't think there's much stronger a pitch than that, Cresta.
Pretty persuasive.
Thank you so much for being part of the Educator's Voice and being our very first guest to join the QTU podcast.
My pleasure. No worries at all. Thanks a lot for having me.